Welcome back. I'm Charlie Gibson. You're watching TIP TV Mining. And joining me here in the studio is Stephen Westhead from Anglo Asian Mining and also Bill Morgan from Anglo Asian Mining. I promised you a stock not only that was a three-bagger that's gone up from 5p to 15p, but also from one of those areas of the world which is classically famous, the land of Colchis, the Lower Caucasus, where Jason, of course, went with his Argonauts in order to find the Golden Fleece. So, gentlemen, welcome to TIP TV Mining. You're, I assume, looking for Golden Fleeces. Tell me all about it. Tell me about Anglo Asian first. Bill, if I can start with you.
Okay. Anglo Asian Mining is gold mining and increasingly a copper miner, which is wholly based in Azerbaijan. We have two locations in Azerbaijan. We have our small head office in Baku, and we have our main lease, which is the Geelibek lease, which is up in the northeast of the country in the foothills of the Caucasus Mountains. Anglo Asian Mining went through the typical development of a junior mining company. Reza Vaziri, who is a local entrepreneurial businessman, he obtained a lease of the Geelibek site back in the, I think, late 1990s, and he then got some initial financing and the company was floated in 2009. So since 2009, we've been a public company on AIM, and we've been producing gold and some copper now from the Geelibek site, which is our main lease in Azerbaijan. At Geelibek, it went through a typical stage of development again. We started off with heap leaching from an open pit mine, which was producing gold through standard process. Then the company moved into building an agitated leach plant, which is very similar to a carbon-in-leach plant. You basically crush the ore, grind it, dissolve it in cyanide, and then produce the gold through electrolysis. That was done because heap leaching requires quite a lot of land, and the topology of the site did not allow for many more heap leaches to be built. And also, it's
so you were on the side of a hill.
Yeah, we were in the foothills of the Caucasus Mountains. Yes, absolutely. And obviously, agitated leaching has got a much quicker timescale in terms of producing gold. So that was the second main development. The agitation leaching plant started up about 3 years ago and was not as successful as initially hoped. And the reason for this was the metallurgy of the ore. The agitation leach plant was designed really for fairly clean oxide ore, whereas they found that as they went deeper into the open pit, they were getting a lot more copper in the ore. And the copper was actually interfering with the agitation leaching process, in as much that it was consuming a lot of cyanide and was making the process very expensive.
Why was that? I mean, why was it not known that as you went deeper you were getting greater concentrations of copper, which was effectively cyanide robbing the gold?
The geology of the site, and Stephen can talk about that, is quite complicated geology. It's not a very straightforward deposit, and I think at the time all of the geological information that the company had suggested that it was going to be a clean oxide ore with gold. Now, as they went deeper into the pit, they found that this was not the case.
Was this, when you say the geology they had at the time, was this Western geology, or was this old, or were they relying on old Soviet data?
I think they were relying on a lot of old Soviet data, yes.
Right, okay. So this is pre your time as well?
Yeah, I've been with the company 2 years, yes, so this was before I joined the company.
Okay. Steve, just explain to us a little bit about that geology, what's complicated about it and how you've overcome it.
Okay, well, the mineralization itself is structurally controlled, so there's a lot of faulting and many different phases of faulting. So essentially the ore body is chopped up into different blocks, and the different blocks have different styles of mineralization, some gold rich, some copper rich. And the ratios of copper gold also vary between the different blocks. So it's not a consistent mineralization and grade all the way through the deposit.
So you need to be very selective in your mining techniques?
We need to be selective in terms of what we send for processing. I mean, the mining technique itself is not selective. We have a large open pit and an underground mine, which has recently come on stream in the last year. And essentially, what we're trying to do now is to better understand the copper-gold relationship.
And how is that understanding developing, progressing, evolving?
It's progressing very well. We have a number of consultant groups working with us. We're also carrying out surface drilling programs, as well as underground drilling programs at the Nugadia mine. And what we're trying to do is evaluate the mineralization between the open pit and underground. And essentially the reason for doing that is to optimize the processing of the ores that we currently have. As Bill mentioned, we have an AGL circuit as well as a flotation circuit. Now, what's been actually happening before the flotation circuit was introduced was as you mentioned, the copper was scavenging off the cyanide, and essentially it was going out to the tails, the copper mineralization. So a flotation plant was put onto the back end as a stage 2 process to recover that copper.
So you're recovering the gold first.
Recovering the gold first, and then
sequentially you're then going in and
that's correct. But as copper is becoming more important, what we want to further assess is whether to actually maybe reverse that process and take out the copper first, which would then allow for better optimizing the reagents and the chemical use on the gold sector.
But this wouldn't make it a copper mine. This would still be a gold mine. It would just be one where you took the copper out first and the gold out second.
That's correct.
And the mineralization, the style of mineralization, is narrow veins?
It is narrow veins. It's an epithermal, what's known as an epithermal high-level gold deposit, and essentially, yes, a whole series of veins of varying widths. Some of it is narrow to the tens of centimeters, but there are several zones, multi-meters in thickness. So it is variable, like we've spoken before, and essentially what we're trying to do is better understand the geological structure that controls certain types of mineralization and certain thicknesses.
So as you go down, you're going from gold into copper. Is there another stage beyond that? You also presumably you're also going from oxides into sulfides.
That's correct.
As well.
Yes.
So you have sort of, I suppose, there are 2 levels of complexity.
Yes.
You might tell me there are more. I don't know, but I've counted 2 so far.
That's right. Well, we've now gone through the transition. Okay, transition zone between the oxide and the sulfide, and part of a program that we want to carry out next year is further evaluation of the open pit, drilling it much deeper.
So how close space do those holes have?
Those holes we'd probably do on a 20-meter grid initially.
That is really quite close.
Quite close.
In the scheme of things.
Yes.
And are these all areas, these are already in the resource model, presumably, these areas that you're drilling. So it's not going to add to the resource, it's going to add, this is metallurgical drilling, effectively.
Both.
Both.
Because now the open pit has gone that much deeper, our drill hole program will actually go below the current level of the resource. So we are looking at potentially increasing the resource as well as better understanding the geology.
So in that sense, well, I'm obviously you're a geologist, so you can never drill these things too close or too much, I understand. What about the expense of the exploration?
Well, the exploration department is focusing on near mine exploration. So we're looking at the future potential of the open pit, how the open pit links to the underground, and the mineralization footprint of the underground mine is still unknown. It is open at depth and open along strike. So we have a lot of potential there. So that's one phase of exploration work we will be doing. In addition to that, within the 300 square kilometer exploration license area that we have, we're drilling another deposit called Biti Bulag, where mineralization was on surface. Again, copper, gold, silver. And we've started that drilling program this year. And so the drilling programs will be finalized by the end of this year for next year's program, really with the strategy of looking at short-term growth and better understanding of the resources and reserves to optimize the processing, and then the medium-term growth where the next phase of mineralization will come from as Gedabek mine starts to tail off.
So, in your wildest dreams, what are we looking at for Anglo Asian Mining? If we, project forward into the future, I don't know, 2, 3, 5 years, what does Anglo Asian look like?
I would like to see it being a significant copper and gold producer. I think it will end up with 2 separate streams, one producing copper, one producing gold. The underground mine will expand significantly, and then within the exploration area itself, maybe 1 or 2 further operations.
So I think you produced how much gold last year? Of the order of 72,000 ounces, did I read that?
72,000 ounces, correct, yes.
Okay, so what about if we were to look forward, 1 to 5 years, how do we see that developing?
Okay, we are actually going to produce slightly less this year, I think around about 69 to 71. And just looking at what we know about in terms of the resource, we are looking at gold production going into a gentle decline. And that will probably tail out over the next 3 to 4 years. But at the same time, we will be becoming an increasingly larger copper producer. So the company will effectively be evolving from, a gold producer with some copper byproduct into much more of a copper producer.
Okay, so when you say, the revenue split at the moment must be sort of, I don't know, 95-5 or something, is it?
It's about that,
Yeah.
correct, yeah. I mean, we would be looking at moving into, say, in the next 3 or 4 years, 50-50.
As much as that, right?
Yeah.
So at that point, you are genuinely a polymetallic.
We will generally be a copper producer, yes.
I mean, I was going to say, what will your costs be in dollars per ounce? But maybe I should ask you in
Well-
dollars per pound of copper. What your? But either way, what are your costs at the moment?
Our costs are, for the 6 months that we did, this is the cost of gold per ounce was $540, which puts us in a fairly low quartile of the costs of gold producers.
Was you second quartile or
No, this was
maybe
the
lower? You first quartile?
It's actually
as in lowest cost.
In the first quartile.
First
quartile, yeah.
Sub $600.
dollars, yeah,
Yes.
Okay, so you're in the lowest cost quartile.
correct.
And can you maintain that?
We think we can maintain it. We think we can possibly go lower. We've done a lot of work in terms of reducing the costs over the last couple of years to really turn the company around. But we are not stopping. We've still got some projects underway to actually reduce the costs. The most significant one of these at the moment is, we produce our electricity through diesel generators, but the electricity grid has actually come to the village where we're situated. So we're doing a $2 million capital project to build a substation and overground pylons to basically connect the mine to the electricity grid. This will save us significant costs next year. We think we'll have this up and running by the end of this year, and also will be quite environmentally good because we won't be burning diesel anymore. So that's one area where we think we can reduce our costs again significantly. We're also building a water treatment plant to take water out of the tailings dam and produce drinking quality water, which will then be able to discharge into the environment. We'll also be able to recover some of the metal which is currently in the tailings dam through this process, and it will also lower the capacity of tailings dam capacity we need. So although we are at low costs, there are still things that we're doing that we think can take it lower anymore.
And just finally, I must ask you, because we're running a little bit short of time, but Azerbaijan is probably not too high up on everyone's radar screen, but what's it actually like to operate there?
It's a very good country to operate in. Azerbaijan does not have a large history of mining. So, for instance, there is no Ministry of Mines. So if you compare it to countries like, say, Russia or Kazakhstan that have got a long-established mining industry, you would be under the control of the Ministry of Mines, and the old Soviet mentality there is still very much one of, well, we're controlling the business, not you. I mean, free enterprise is something which these countries are still not quite getting into in the mining business. Whereas in Azerbaijan, we're under the auspices of the Ministry of Ecology, not the Ministry of Mines. There isn't one. So we have a lot more freedom to operate our business say, in a lot of countries where the mining industry is much more tightly controlled. I mean, obviously, we respect the environment. We don't go out and do things that are not best practice, but at the same stage, we don't have to get everything rubber stamped by ministry. The second reason that makes it quite good as a country, it's a fairly low-cost country. It's not a particularly bureaucratic country. And again, you know, so things like importing equipment and doing leases, etc., it's pretty easy. So, you know, to actually pursue a business in Azerbaijan on a practical day-to-day level is actually
Is pretty easy.
It's pretty easy, yeah.
Or not difficult.
It's not difficult. I mean, nothing's easy, but you compare it to countries in the former Soviet Union, which I've worked in, such as Kazakhstan and Russia, it is much, much easier.
It's a lot. Well, very well done, and thank you very much indeed. My thanks to Bill Morgan, the Chief Financial Officer of Anglo Asian Mining, and sorry, you're Bill.
I'm Bill.
And Steve Westhead, who is in fact the CFO of Anglo Asian Mining. Presumably more information on your website, Anglo Asian...
We have a website. We're an AIM-listed company. We're required to do so, obviously.
angloasian.co.uk.com.
angloasianmining.co.uk, correct. And we've just released our results this morning, which is why we're here. We're doing some meetings. The company announced profit for the 6 months, which we're delighted to announce, because obviously the last couple of years we've been loss-making while we've been turning the company around. So it's a good time to be at Anglo Asian Mining.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much indeed. I'm afraid that's all we have time for. If you want more from the land of cultures, however, and the potential for more three-baggers, then tune in to us next week. You've been watching Tip TV Mining, brought to you by Blytheway and Bear Dolbear. I'm Charlie Gibson, and you have a capital day.